No one wakes up one day and says, I think I'll lose my financial independence today. I think I'll lose my identity as a career person. It just happened. My wake-up call to what I had lost was 13 years later, learning that my husband was living a double life. He was having an affair. And I was suddenly very alone, very scared, and processing, how am I going to rebuild my life? How am I ever going to attain financial security when I haven't worked in 14 years?
From the news team at LinkedIn, I'm Jessi Hempel, and this is Hello Monday. Today we're talking about money, and of course, because it's our show, that means that what we're really talking about is everything underneath it. Our guest is Steph Wagner. Her book is called Fly, A Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom and Building a Life You Love. I want to start by sharing some statistics with you from Steph's introduction. 80%. That is the percentage of women who will eventually face life alone. That is because the average age of widowhood is 59 years, and more than half of marriages end in divorce. I know I sound like a real downer, right? Well, listen to this one, 40%. That is the percentage by which a household income will decline for women after a partnership ends. And by the way, it's twice as much as that household income declines for men. I guess that's not really a surprise. So today we're going to get into talking about wealth and how we build it, but most importantly, how we rebuild it. No matter where you're starting from, this episode is meant to be a handhold, to be a promise that, you can get it together. And you too can build your own wealth and feel great about it. Here's Steph Wagner.
I loved finance. I loved money. I loved math. I went to, I got a degree in business from USC and got into investment banking right out of college.
So you were probably that friend that we would ask when we had money questions.
Yeah, although I will tell you, I didn't really appreciate the correlation between personal finance and corporate finance. I really was super focused on the corporate finance aspect of the business world.
As that young woman, you were always a career woman,
yes,
right?
Very much so. And a lot of that really came from watching, my dad control every aspect of my mother's life, despite the fact that she was a very successful businesswoman. But I also married my college sweetheart.
Yeah.
We started a family young. And one day, despite the fact that I loved what I did, there were still these pressures as a mother of a 2-year-old pregnant. I remember, I talk about it in the book of my, I was asked to go get on a plane, on a Cessna, on a small plane, to go look at a deal in rural Alabama. And at that moment, I thought, something's got to give. Right?
So there you are pregnant, you have a 2-year-old at home. Your husband is also very career forward and is traveling most of every week, right?
Yes, like crazy.
And, life would say, our moms tried to prepare us for, we should be able to have it all. You should be able to do it. And in that moment, you were like, wait, but I don't have to do it.
Something has to give. And I never once thought that it wasn't going to be me to make those decisions, that I was the one that would opt out. Never thought about the consequences of that. I just felt like it was my responsibility. And I think that, from a social perspective, especially back then, right? It was the woman's job. It was the wife. It was the mother. So I quit. And I will tell you, I also was pretty naive because I had a lot of confidence. And I thought, maybe this will be for a year. I'll always have a job. And probably the worst thing that my boss at the time said was, Steph, you will always have a job. I understand the pressure and the struggle. I get it. Come back. Right. So that gave me a false sense of security.
You simply wake up somewhere down the line and think, oh, I don't have a sense of confidence here anymore.
Right. Well, and I think what I also underestimated was I lost my earning power that day, right? That's all I thought I lost.
Yeah.
In some ways, could get it back pretty quick.
Right?
Correct. I could get it back at any moment. But what I didn't recognize was that over time, and I'm glad you brought that up because it is a slow and steady process, right? Where all of a sudden we wake up. I also began to relinquish all control over my entire financial life. I let him do it all. Yeah. And not because I didn't want to, because we were dividing and conquering. We don't think about the consequences of that, right? It is truly dividing and conquering. And, I love what you said, and I want to expand upon that if I can. no one wakes up one day and says, I think I'll lose my financial independence today.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing as I think I'll lose my identity as a career person. It just happened. And when I realized it, my wake-up call to what I had lost was 13 years later when I went through, a horrific, not so much a horrific divorce, but an aha moment, learning things that, my husband was living a double life. He was having an affair. And the affair had gone on for a long time without me knowing it. And so it was like, when did my life suddenly become a lie? And what have I given up where I put trust into someone that really turned out to be, not my advocate, but my adversary? And I was suddenly very alone, very scared, and processing, how am I going to rebuild my life? But how am I ever going to attain financial security when I haven't worked in 14 years?
I think that many of us go through a moment like this. Maybe it's not divorce for you. Maybe it is a great loss.
Yep.
Maybe it is job loss. Maybe it is a restructure of your life. But we can't decouple the fact that we need to make a change from the grief and the stress and the sort of blow to your ego that is the hard shift you're going through, right?
Correct. I beat myself up for a long time going, I'm smarter than this. I'm smarter than this. How did I not know? There was so much shame in being duped.
Yeah.
And getting over that feeling of being duped and, like, to your point, what else am I being duped about? It does strip away your confidence. And you're right. Divorce was my catalyst, but it could be a business failure, a job, anything, right? Yeah. Anything. And that's normal, unfortunately, but that's where the real work can begin, right? I mean, those low moments are also tremendous opportunities to learn things about yourself that you never would have learned if you hadn't gone through that life-shattering moment.
Okay, so I want to get to the work. And what I most appreciate about your book is simple, straightforward steps that anyone can follow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And it begins with mindset.
It does.
So talk to us about where we begin when we're in that moment where we're like, I don't even know if I can do this. I'm $30,000 in credit card debt.
Yep.
I can't really afford the monthly expenses on my home. I don't know where to begin.
Yeah, well, you're talking really about a scarcity mindset, right? That, I was someone that lived life big with big goals, and I'd always had a growth mindset, an abundant mindset. And then to your point, suddenly as the confidence was gone and I'm having to rebuild and looking, going, who is going to hire me? I've been out of the workforce for, I started to go, I'm playing life really small right now, right? I'm holding myself back. But it's building awareness around that is where change begins. And that's what's hard because we get stuck in our rut.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is you kind of start with, where am I today? Particularly around money. I have a scarcity or I have a growth mindset, but how is that translating into my behaviors?
Right.
My money personalities.
Right.
And taking a hard look at what are some of the behaviors I do that are healthy or unhealthy that are creating, bad money habits, good money habits, but it's how I interact with it every single day. Awareness around that and seeing that some personalities have good attributes and some have negative attributes.
Yeah.
Well, you then have to look at, where have you been? What from your childhood, from your past, or even experiences later of life have contributed to where you are today? Because that's where change can happen, is when you really examine the why behind it.
We've had a lot of guests in the studio. Melody Hobson is one of them, for example, who's spoken a lot to this idea that the money beliefs that were modeled for you as a child become the money beliefs that you live with your entire life, regardless of the amount that you have.
The zeros are irrelevant.
Yeah.
They're absolutely irrelevant. It is all about, how you were raised, what you picked up on, or what you didn't see.
Yeah.
And I want to build awareness around that too, because sometimes we incorporate or we inherit money habits that we saw and we repeat them. But I have a lot of such cases in my past where I watched my dad be so irresponsible with money and spend and spend and spend. He never saved, but he did make a good living. And so he always thought there's more right around the corner. That it paralyzed me because I also saw the stress that was put into our family.
Right.
That they lived with every day, and the fighting and the control. And that made me afraid to ever spend because
Right.
I didn't want to repeat those behaviors. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you model exactly what you saw. Some of us actually do the opposite, which can harm us as well. But you've got to unpack it and look at why, what is the root of our behaviors? Does this belief even work for me anymore? And if
Right.
it doesn't, how do I change course?
And by the way, for everyone out there who is thinking, well, I actually am pretty evolved around that. I did some therapy around that.
Yeah.
I have discovered in my own life that you don't just do this once. You unpack it, then something shifts and you have to unpack it again. And the thing about our core beliefs is they're insidious. They're always there. And if we're not looking at them, we're trapped by them. If we look at them, they become great tools for us.
When you examine where you've been, it also brings awareness of what am I doing even with my today, maybe even with your children, or maybe in your relationships. Am I creating money messages that are not actually what I intended, right? So by examining your past, it also allows you to have conversations of what does my present look like in terms of how I'm communicating about money or not communicating at all, which is just as damaging.
Right. Yeah, you're speaking my language as we try to figure out allowance in our household.
Well, and if I could just expand on one thing, when we think about relationships and when we think about our family members, whether it's our partner, our spouse or our children, or even siblings or parents, the truth is they have a money personality too. And so we tend to only examine our own and think everyone must communicate and have feelings about money that are similar to us. Well, the truth is no. They have a money personality based on their own set of circumstances. And maybe if we build awareness on how we're different, we can have more productive conversations around money. It doesn't matter what I say, it's how I say it and making sure it lands in a way that is received productively versus triggering stress or arguments, which is, I think, why oftentimes money is the root of a lot of conflict within families.
Right, because money is actually the unlock for the system of the conflict. There's a next step to the work you offer, which is simply like a structured way to think about wealth and our relationship to it and what it actually is, and therefore how to build it.
Yeah, I lay it out in kind of a 7-step process, right? And the first clearly is examining your relationship with money. The next is taking inventory and really understanding what you have to work with, right? And not just, it's not as simple as what do I owe? What do I own? What do I make? What do I spend? It's digging deeper and looking really at, okay, is what I own, right? My investments, are they liquid? What I owe, what's the cost of that debt? How do I equip myself with all the information so that I can begin to think more strategically about how to spend, also how to have a really oiled machine when it comes to our balance sheet.
Right.
So that's kind of the second step. But what I think also, to expand upon that is equipping yourself with a knowledge of how do you think about money. Fair?
Yeah.
So, thinking money is like what we can do with our money and how money earns it's on itself.
Right.
Oftentimes is more than what we can actually earn ourselves through our work, through our jobs.
Right.
But we have to allow money to work for us.
Right.
And I don't think enough people stop to understand the earning power of money if you let it. Does that make sense? Like money doubles every 10 years.
You might be talking about compounding interest,
There you
which
go.
I'm just saying is a big word in my mind. I know it. I trust it. I try not to think about it too much.
Right. Well, and it's a lot of math behind it. And so some people who aren't comfortable with math go, I don't understand how it works. So I try to offer tools like tricks of the trade to look at money differently. And I think most importantly, when you take compounding and you combine it with this unbelievable thing called opportunity cost, this notion that yes to something always means no to something else, or no to something always means yes to something else, whether it's your time, talent, or treasure.
Right.
What could I have done with that money if I didn't spend it?
Right.
What could I have done with that money if I didn't keep it all in cash? Right? Which is often a really big problem. Statistically speaking, women hold way too much money in cash because they're risk adverse.
Right.
But there's an opportunity cost to that, because we're sabotaging our money's ability to work for us and create growth for us and long-term financial security.
Right.
So I try to offer ways to look at it that are friendly and approachable versus a bunch of formulas that are just going to, make our eyes cross.
Okay, so I'm going to distill 2 rules from that. Number 1 is if you want to buy a latte 7 days a week at Starbucks, that's fine, but keep in mind that the $4 that you let's face it, in 2025, let me revise.
$6.
Let the $6 that you spend on that daily latte could actually be worth 10 times as much if you put them in a...
If you let it. If you let it grow and you are more aware that you're not just losing the outflow of money that you go to spend on
Right.
it. You're losing what that particular dollar plus how it could grow over time. And to your point, over 15 years can actually be closer to $50,000 if you did it on a daily basis. So
But what could be close? Not the $6.
$6 every day invested for 15 years can be closer to $48,000 if you invested at 7%.
That's hurting my brain a little
Yeah.
bit. It's hurting
Well,
my brain a little bit because I am sloppier than I want to be around this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I got a life, I got kids. They want something at the drugstore and I say, yes, you can have that
That's
Snickers bar.
right.
Just stop crying.
Exactly. Again, this is thinking about the opportunity cost of that daily decision and what I could do with it if I actually was more disciplined. This is not about depriving us of, it's about becoming more intentional with our spending, becoming more intentional with the decisions we're making. And that if you still want it, do it. But think about it before you do it.
Well, there's a second part to this framework. But before we get there, I want to move to rule number 2, which is rule number 2 is, hey, that rainy day fund that you are obsessively saving because you are way too terrified that you will lose it in the market because, Lordy, do we know what's going on with the stock market?
Right.
But the truth is we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
We are, especially, think about the period that we've lived through with high inflation over the past few years. I mean, that cash is losing money, right? And so we have to become more strategic with what is the opportunity cost of that, which over 20, 30 years is a lot.
Yeah.
I share a story about my aunt in the book. I was stunned to realize that her go-to investments were bank accounts and CDs.
No.
And the truth is wealth preservation, no risk. She didn't want it to grow. It worked for her, right?
Yeah.
Because she could sleep at night, which is really important. I mean, this has to be part of an overall financial plan to make sure that you're making the right decision to not ultimately wake up at 85, 90 and go, I just ran out of my money.
Yeah.
Because you can't make that back.
No.
So I try to throw some tools in there, like the 72 rule. How long does it take for money to double at certain growth rates? Right. And then that helps you make more important or more strategic decisions as you spend of what could I do with this?
Well,
it could actually double if I let it grow.
Well, here's also where I want to sort of offer a larger framework for thinking about this. I think for those of us who are nervous about money, which I'm just going to go out on a limb and say is 90% of the people who are with us in our community, there's a sense that we just need more. We have, no matter how much we've saved, we need more than we have for a future that's unpredictable and we do not understand. And it can lead us to feel bad about every decision we're making.
Correct.
I don't need to feel bad about that Starbucks latte if I've decided that that's how I'm going to spend my money.
And you can afford it.
And you offer a sort of a framework for thinking about, well, how much should you spend on the need to have? How much should you spend on savings?
Yeah. So I look at it. People ask me all the time, do you believe in budgets? I don't. I think budgets kind of set ourselves up to fail. And to your point, feel if we miss our budget and we overspend, we get that we're disempowered, right? We're not empowered and feel good. We feel more shame and it's everything we're working to combat, right? It's counterproductive. So what you're speaking of is the 45-20-35 model, which is a framework for our spending. How you execute that on a daily basis is a whole nother topic. But first and foremost, you look at your net income that's coming in every month and you say, how do I begin to allocate it in buckets? I've got my unavoidables. They're, for the most part, our fixed expenses, right?
The mortgage.
It's our things to keep a roof over our head, get from place to place, transportation, utilities, insurance. What's important is you have to understand, and we don't think about it enough, there's wants embedded in that, right?
Yeah.
There's wants and needs in all of our spending. And so I can lay out this framework, but you also have to take a hard look and understand I'm making choices based on the type of life I want to live and lifestyle that are want-based and maybe I need to make some adjustments there because I can't necessarily afford those wants.
So, and that's how much is that, the 45%?
So the wants and needs live in all of our spending, but
Sure.
the 45 is really geared towards the unavoidables. The 20% is non-negotiable. That's investing in you, right? That should be, that has to happen. How you do it depends on your circumstance, and I'll get into that in a second. Then you have your 35. Yeah. That's your empowerment money. That's what you're referring to. Mm-hmm. That's money that you can control. It's gasoline. It's grocery store, right? Yes, you need food, but do you need a filet mignon every single night? No, that's where the wants and needs become even more pronounced.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, you might need a roof over your head, but does it need to be a 3,500 square foot house, right?
So this is actually a wonderful tool to help you understand where you need to make some different decisions.
Correct.
So if you look at the entirety of the money that you're bringing in and discover that you're spending 65% instead of 45%, then you need to think about revising.
Well, yeah, exactly. And or you are at least aware that I'm taking it out of my last bucket, my empowerment money, which means I have less discretionary spending.
Yeah.
And I'm making a conscious effort. I mean, listen, we're in New York. It's very expensive to live.
Tell me about
it. So
the
45, 20, 35 may not necessarily work, right? Because I may have to use some of my empowerment money, that 35, to help subsidize higher housing costs, for example.
Sure.
But the problem is we do that without a source for it. Yeah. And the 45 is where your source should be. What happens when we do that? We go into debt.
Yeah.
And so this is intended to create a framework to be more intentional and to understand I have to constantly watch and make sure that I'm sticking with this formula or sticking with this framework, because if I'm not, it's going on a credit card or it's coming out of my savings account, or worse, I'm pulling money out of my investment accounts, or God forbid your retirement accounts, to fund the deficit. Right. And that's a recipe for disaster, because it's taking away from your net worth, which you're trying to build and grow for long-term security.
Right.
So I personally just believe this framework it gives you more control versus a budget that almost sets you up to feel failure if you miss it.
Yeah. Budgets to me are sort of like diets. Right. Like they're sort of impossible to keep.
Right. Well, and also you have to track your spending then down to every penny to make sure that you're sticking to it. And how realistic is that? Might sound good on a to-do list, but to actually execute that every day and live that would be exhausting.
Well, and especially for those of us who don't love money.
That's right.
Right? And my wife would put herself in that category. Yeah. I think that there is a false perception that sort of stepping into a control role in your finances means putting a lot of time against it. And now you're going to have to think about it a lot. But actually, one thing I took from your book is, like, if you're doing this work at a high level, you're setting yourself up to think about it less.
100%. Absolutely. 100%. It's getting into daily habits that go into you looking at your money on a regular basis. But to your point, it's not a deep dive. You've got kind of a checklist to go and make sure that, you've got everything intact. But then also the more practice makes perfect, right? Yeah. It takes 21 days for something to become a habit. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and it just gets part of your daily routine.
Mm-hmm. So you were a person who went through this huge shift from being like career forward and very much in charge of your finances
to a stay-at-home mom.
One day where you realized that you had let go of that. And look, there are many stay-at-home moms who don't let go of that, who do continue to play a big role in managing their finances. But if you have gotten to a place where you are not that person in your family, and then you had to rebuild, how long did the rebuild take you? And what did it cost you?
Cost me in which way? That's a great
Money,
question.
time, emotion.
I don't think it cost me. I think it actually gave to me. It empowered me. It made me, I'll be honest, when I had to rebuild my life after devastating loss. I mean, I was blindsided and truly lost my best friend overnight, as I found out what had happened and was completely blindsided. Emotionally, I was a disaster. financially, I was a disaster, but I leaned into what was comfortable to me, and that was my knowledge about money.
Yeah.
And so I almost used that as a tool to start getting control over my life, which that may not necessarily be for everyone, because for a lot of people, to your point, money is the scary topic. For me, it was, no, I actually know this stuff. I just need to look at it a different way and take power, over it.
Yeah.
So it didn't cost me. I actually look at it as a gift that transcended into the other aspects of my life, where I began to say, wow, now that I have control over this, look at all the other possibilities that are opening up, because this security allows me to dream bigger. Do I want to start a business? What type of job I didn't want to go get a punch the clock. I needed to figure out how I was going to go rebuild from an earning power in something I loved, that brought me joy, that gave me purpose, which the word purpose is a very pressurized word.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. But when you figure out what lights you up, and then you think about, how do I begin to monetize that? It's pretty hard to dream big like that when you are so fearful of how you're going to cover your bills.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just interesting. I love that question, because I never looked at it that way. I really saw this is my gateway into being able to look at you now today, 12 years later.
Yeah.
It didn't take me 12 years to rebuild, but I'm still rebuilding.
Yeah.
This book has been a goal for 12 years. And I don't know what the next chapter will bring. I'm still staying open and curious, but gaining security on this really allowed me to truly be able to look at you and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me 12 years ago, when I was on the floor, devastated and crying and broken and wondering, how in the world am I going to ever feel joy and be able to support these children?
Yeah.
And it was a gift. And I'm so grateful for that.
Okay, one more question. Forgive me if this is too personal, but as you think then about relationships as they unfold in your life, do you think you would ever give up what you have now in terms of your understanding of your financial stability?
Never. It's the biggest gift. I look at how to have healthier relationships now over the topic of money. We can build healthy relationships and still honor each other's independence.
Yeah.
Because I get that a lot, is particularly in second marriages. Like, how do you build yours, mine, and ours? Well, there's a beautiful way to do that, right?
Yeah.
And to both honor your each of your autonomy and financial autonomy, but then work to build something together. And that takes work. It takes conscious work. But I think it is a recipe for a really healthy relationship, is to never lose that autonomy, and to figure out, how do I take it and how do I bring it into our relationship and build something together.
That was Steph Wagner. Her new book is called Fly. Look for it. Follow her. It'll be worth your time, I promise. And there's a big idea that I am walking away with today. I hope it lands well with you too. It's this idea that financial independence isn't really about money or how much of it we have. It's about the sense that we are driving our lives, right? We are in control of the choices that we make, and we understand them. And Steph's own story shows us that it's too easy to lose sight of that, and it is possible to regain it. I mean, Steph comes from a financial background, and she had to learn a number of things that I'm here to tell you aren't rocket science. You can learn them too. All right, that's it for this week. I am Jessi Hempel, and this is Hello Monday. We will be right back here in the studio next Monday. Hello Monday is a production of LinkedIn News. This show is produced by Rachel Karp, Lolia Briggs, and Ava Ahmadbegi. Sarah Storm is our senior producer, sound design and engineering by Asaf Gadron. Our theme music was composed just for us by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. Michaela Greer is a friend of the show forever. Kyle Ransom Walsh is editor-at-large of editorial graphics. Dave Pond is head of production and creative operations. Courtney Coop is head of original programming. Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. I'm Jessi Hempel, and this is Hello Monday. See you next week.